Starfield. Just mentioning this game will net you a plethora of thoughts and opinions from people that played the game and even people that didn't. You'll hear everything from it's buggy trash, it's garbage, it never should have been released, all the way to this is the perfect example of the Xbox tax. It should have been Game of the Year, and the fact that it wasn't even nominated just shows you the industry's bias against Xbox. It really just depends on who you're talking to at the time. Just prior to its launch, I watched Bethesda's Starfield Direct video with a good friend of mine, F1ntintin. Bethesda really hit it out of the park with that Direct. We both came away from it really looking forward to playing Starfield. The conversation we recorded today, however, is a little bit different from the one that we had 6 months ago. In this one, we reflect back on our time in Starfield. We'll discuss the good, the bad, and yes, even the ugly. I'm Mental 9R, and this is Caffeine Entertainment. Hello, and we're back again. It's been roughly 5 or 6 months now, I think, since we talked about Starfield originally. With me today, I've got my good buddy F1ntintin. Welcome, Finn. It's good to have you back, and I'm looking forward to getting your thoughts on Starfield today.
Yeah,
Oh, I
and
lost your
yours.
audio.
There's lots to
Oh,
talk about,
there
I'm
was.
sure.
Yeah. It's
Oh,
weird.
great.
Your audio cut out after we did all this pre-roll stuff, and everything was perfect. But hopefully that connects here again, and we'll be
Is,
off and running. But yeah,
can you hear me now?
yeah. Actually, it looks like it's sorted out again. So we hopefully we're good.
Okay.
But yeah, it's been a while, and I think you're in the same situation as me. I haven't played it since probably October in earnest. I did fire it up a little bit yesterday just because I wanted to remind myself a little bit about the game in New Game Plus, and I played around for a little bit, got myself into a space battle and got blown up because I couldn't remember all the controls and everything that I had set up, and I didn't have a controller handy. So I was, when I think I told you before, when I was playing, I used a controller for the space stuff and keyboard and mouse when I was on planets. So I got
Right.
dead, but other than that, it was kind of fun just to jump back in for a few minutes. So I think today we'll go through a few topics that you're well familiar with anyway, because I think most of them were yours anyhow. So let's talk a little bit about what the promise of Starfield was. At least to me, I can tell you, I thought we were going to get an epic space RPG, and it was going to be this big base building, ship building extravaganza with thousands of planets to explore and factions to join and quests to do and so on and so on. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reality is that when we went through the first walkthrough and we were looking at the video and stuff, I was kind of skeptical, I guess, that a lot of what they promised would come to fruition. And I think, honestly, that was proven to be true. I think that there was a lot more limitations on it than you would be led to believe based on the video. Um, but that didn't necessarily make the game not good. It just meant that it was a whole different game than the one you were describing there, right? Or that they were describing initially, that you could go anywhere and explore anything, and the universe is going to be full of all this different stuff. It's a big place, but it was mostly full of the same stuff in lots of different places, right? But and lots of cutting and pasting, I would say, around the planets. So uh, that
Yeah,
that was a bit again disappointing. I don't know if it was disappointing. I think it was completely understandable, but it wasn't what they said it was going to be. That was the thing, right?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I can echo a lot of that. I think for me, and we'll talk a bit about how much time we put into it, and I think that's where you far exceeded me. But in my 150 hours, I didn't run into some of the situations where, you go to a new planet and you run into the same mine or whatever. That never happened to me because I think just in the limited play that I had, not that 150 hours is limited, I guess, but um, I didn't run into things like that. Generally speaking, most of the planets felt unique to me.
Uh,
Uh, I did. I did have for the most part, a great time with the exploration that I did. But I agree. I think they oversold it, I think, for the most part. With, hey, you see that moon over there? You can go there. And you can take I think Alana Pierce spent 7 hours flying to one of those planets in one of her live streams and, fell asleep multiple times along the way. But then when she did get there, she couldn't actually land on it. And I think that was maybe the part of it that I think deceived a lot of people. It felt
yeah,
like, oh yeah, geez, I'll be able to, take off from Earth, for instance, and zip out to the moon in a short hop, skip, and a jump and land on the moon. And I think that definitely was sort of the impression I had, is it would be a little bit more fluid than it actually was. In hindsight, I think I'm kind of glad it wasn't like that,
mm,
because it would have been pretty boring. A lot of that space flight would have been pretty bleak and boring. I think there's a lot of emptiness between points in space, and I think just fast travel is the way to handle that. But
yeah, I entirely agree. I mean, I again, it's down to, and I know we all talk about this as well, like, but it's just giving ammunition to the haters out there by promising one thing and then giving something else. Although, again, I entirely agree that uh, that would not. I mean, I actually tried replicating what you just described there, and I don't remember where it was, but like some other planet in the same system, and I was flying and flying and flying, and I didn't seem to be getting any closer. So after
yeah,
15 or 20 minutes, I said, okay, this doesn't. I don't seem to be out of the orbit of the other one. It's still there. It's still bloody
yeah,
huge
yeah.
in my screen. So I don't know if that's really a thing. I'm not
Hmm.
sure. Even if this person did it like in beta or whatever, maybe they took that out or something
Yeah,
because
no, it was in the full game that she did
okay,
it, but yeah, yeah, it
yeah.
was in the full game, but
But again, that to
it's
me is kind of an irrelevancy, I guess, in a way, because I thought it was good nonetheless, and I agree with you. Like even in, and I will probably be referring to Fallout a bunch of times during this conversation. Even in
mhm.
Fallout, like which is a cool environment and all that. Like after you've been to places, eventually, like okay, I've been there. I don't need to see all the desert and all the oops, we're
Yeah.
sorry, all the dogs in
It's
between.
okay.
Like
I'll
yeah,
make it 18 plus. It won't be
yeah.
kid friendly.
Yeah, but you don't have to see all the rocks etc. in between again.
Yeah,
So yeah, like I didn't have a major problem with that. Again, I just worried when we did the initial walkthrough or video viewing or whatnot. I worry that it wouldn't be what they said it was going to be, and that's going to make people hate on it. And I
right.
think, honestly, based on the videos, and I haven't watched a lot of them, I'll be honest with you. I'm not really that interested. You know me. I'm not that interested in the Xbox versus PlayStation, or I'm not that interested in the people who hate on things. Like if I don't like a game, well, I don't play it, and I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
I don't feel the need to bash it because coming from a development background myself, I kind of understand how ridiculously hard some of these things would be to do, right? So
Can't
you can,
please everybody.
yeah, it could be not a good end or not a game that would suit me, but still, it's an amazing feat what they accomplished. So even
Yeah.
if it wasn't what they said it was going to be, it's still that didn't bother me that much. But again, it one thing I had a bit more of a problem with was and I know you said you didn't come across it that much, and I put in a bunch more hours than you did. I don't know how much it
So how
was.
how, how much did you put in then?
I reckon, well, I can't remember what level you said you got to, but I was at like level, I think it was like 160 or something like that, or 150.
Okay.
So I reckon I put in probably 400 hours easy.
Okay.
Uh,
So roughly
so
three times. Like I think I was around level 50 something. So you're
Right.
roughly three times the level and three times the time.
Yeah, and that's approximate, right? Because I'm trying to remember the last time I even looked at what at some point when you're pouring so many hours into the game, you stop looking because you're like getting a bit embarrassed that like I could have learned German in this time, you know. But
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, I did come across the repetition quite a lot, like, and even to the point where there would be the same messages on consoles, you know, from the same doctor complaining about the same lack of supplies in our station, etc. On the other side of the universe. So that was a bit. I guess it kind of takes you out of it. The
yeah.
idea that you're really in far-flung reaches of space. I don't think it would have been that much work to create, even like to get AI to create a whole bunch of like random dialogues that would cover
Yeah.
like, you know, 100 different situations and then 10 different variants of each of those situations. That would have been pretty easy to do, I would have thought. At the end of the day, all it was just messages on a computer. So that was a bit
Mhm.
I think that was a bit short-sighted of them, and it wouldn't have been a lot of effort to make it better. But again, it wasn't such a huge deal for the overall game. I think that it was just a little bit, I would say, lazy.
Okay. So then if we think about, the epic space adventure, how close do you think they got to that? Do you think it's there, personally, I think for me, I had a great time. And the time I put in it, I was loving it. I didn't it's rare for me to not have two or three games on the go at once. And while I was playing Starfield, that's what I was playing, generally speaking. The odd little dip into another game, maybe, but generally speaking, it was just Starfield. I always looked forward to getting back into it. I had a great time. Now, we can talk about base building, shipbuilding, and all that stuff. But in terms of just the epic space adventure RPG, how do you think they did there?
Well, I loved it. Like as a game, I loved it. I loved it lots. Like I loved, and again, maybe why I encounter those situations more often than you. Early on in the game, I moved away from you know, the standard mission, and I got into a lot of space exploration, especially as I found, you know, there was a couple of tips online, but then there was also a bunch of stuff around how do you level up, or how do you, you know, how do you grind up levels, etc. So going around to different planets, uh, just checking out what was there, killing some wildlife, etc. Like, you know, killing some bad guys where you found bases. I just found it like lots of fun, just exploring randomly. And I don't know how much of my, you know, whatever 300-400 hours it was doing that stuff, but I would say like probably the bulk of it was not playing missions. It was really just exploring things. And then, as you said as well, you touched on like the again, not necessarily part of the overall uh, epicness of space, but you know, the shipbuilding, the ship battles, the factions, and the storylines, they were all really good as well. But yeah, I spent the majority of my time just scooting around and fighting random bad guys, etc. Like, and and what I did think there was a lot of rinse and repeat. I did feel like that there was a bunch of different planetary environments, even within the same planet. Like there'd be like mountainous, icy zones, and then
Right.
like tundras and stuff like. So it was a very well done, I guess, is all I could say.
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of that. I think, like I said, I never ran into the repetition aspect of it in my 150 hours that I put into my, I'll say my first playthrough, because it is a game I intend to go back to, and I think we actually had a topic about that. But uh, I found it like I love the game too. I mean yeah, okay, yeah, there's a lot of loading screens, and we'll get into that stuff, I'm sure, as we go through what they got wrong and things of that nature. But generally speaking, I love the game. Um and I don't know, maybe this is a good segue to go into, let's talk about what they did right. For me, one of the things I loved was the space battles. Who knew? That's not
Yeah,
something I was expecting that I would enjoy as much as I did. And especially, the skill trees and stuff. That was not on my radar to start advancing my piloting skills and stuff. And boy, did I learn in a hurry that that's a skill you want to have, because it's the difference between life and death, is just being able to have some of those skills a little more fleshed out, and having an easier time locking on targets, and being able to take out their shield generator or whatever the case might be. And had a lot of fun doing that. But uh,
Yeah, like I think that I already said I love the general exploring, but I think second to the general exploring was, I guess, two sides of the same coin. Was number one, the ship battles, as you mentioned. I kind of expected to like that. Back in the day, I always like kind of in space battle games, etc. Um, but not only that, but then the idea of building up your ship and expanding on your ship, etc. Although I do
right.
think, probably delving into, not necessarily they got wrong about it. I think they were very much like it was a bit of a sandbox in some respects, and
Hmm.
they just threw you in there and didn't really explain very well how to build a ship or expand a
Nope.
ship or whatever, especially on the Xbox. And I know we'll talk about Xbox versus PC, but I didn't have a clue what to do the first time. And like, uh, it's not at all well explained that when you buy a new gun and you attach it on and you get an error, you're like, okay, what the hell is wrong here? And like at the
Yeah.
start, I kept on going, okay, I guess I'll just cancel it because I don't know what the hell isn't attached to my ship. It all looks attached to me, or I don't know why I'm not allowed to add this on, or they say I don't have enough power. What does that mean? How do I get more power? So all those things to people who've played a game are probably very, very obvious. But when you're starting, it's like maybe I missed that memo or something
Yeah.
in the game, but like I didn't have a clue what I was
No
doing.
one sent you the
It took
report
me
on that.
watching a bunch of videos on YouTube to figure out. Yeah, like it took me watching a bunch of videos on YouTube by various folks to figure out like how the hell to do this thing. But once I did know,
Yeah.
uh, then I really liked it a lot. So like I said, like the space battles, and then when you're getting your ass handed to you, then going and getting better guns, making money, etc., and then coming back to the same guy and says, okay, now we'll see who's boss,
I'll
right?
kill
So,
you.
but yeah, so that was a lot
Yeah.
of fun as well. Yeah,
Yeah. No, I
and
didn't. I don't
and
know
I
about you. I didn't
another
build
thing
it.
is,
Oh, I think
sorry,
we
go
got a
ahead.
delay issue going on. But yeah, I was going to say, I didn't get into building ships from scratch at all. That was something I never got into. All I really did was modify them, putting in, new guns, things like that, better reactor, maybe better shields and stuff. I don't know if you got into actually building a ship from scratch, because there was a lot of crazy creations that people were coming up with that I was seeing online.
So one of the reasons I didn't get into that was that a lot of that is based on, as far as I understand it, your outposts as well. Like, to build a ship from scratch, I think you basically have to have an
Okay.
outpost. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But what I did do was get very basic ships and then make them completely unrecognizable. Not just adding on guns, but like basically deleting every single module of it except like one or two, and then just buying new stuff for it. So
Okay.
I what I kind of ended up with was you'd have a basic ship, you'd add a bunch of crap on it from one manufacturer. I didn't give a crap what it looked like, etc. Like, so bits sticking everywhere, just as long as it was all attached together, flying across. And then after doing a couple of trips here and there, or popping into a couple of different manufacturers, etc., or a couple of ship technicians, then focusing on making it look nice as well. Like, so I did that a
Right.
bunch of times. Every time, one of the things, it's good and it's bad. I mean, I've gone through New Game Plus a couple of times, but it's good and it's bad. But you have to start from scratch every time. So every time you start a new game, you have to start from scratch with your ship as well. So, and
Right.
each time I did it a little bit different and a little bit better, or a little bit
Sure.
different at least anyway. So yeah, I spent a lot of time on that.
Okay. So faction quests, that's another thing that I personally thought were really well done. I enjoyed all the faction quests that I did. I think I did all of them, of the main ones. There's like four, I think, if I recall correctly. Like even that one where you do a bit of the corporate, you're working for that corporation, Ryujin, I think it was called, or something like that. Um, I even enjoyed that one. That was the last one that I did, but I really liked the Freestar Ranger one. Uh, in general, I had a great time playing those. The Crimson Fleet one was pretty good too. Overall, it was hard not to kill everybody at some points, but generally speaking, it was pretty good. I quite enjoyed it. Um, yeah, your thoughts on the faction quests?
Like yourself, I did all of them. I did all of them the first run through as well, and I think I actually completed all of them before I completed the main quest the first run through. So yeah, I thought they were all really very well done. They're all well developed. Um, yeah, some of them were better than others for sure. Uh, but they each introduced new characters that were pretty interesting. They each had a pretty decent storyline, etc. There was gaps
Hmm.
in them as well, like, but I just felt that they were all like they're all worthy of like almost like a full game, like or a DLC or whatever. Like they all felt like there was a beginning and a
Yeah,
middle of the and an end to them. So
yeah.
like I enjoyed each of them, and I like yourself. I think actually the first one I did just because of the order of I didn't have any plan in mind. I hadn't looked at what you should do first and all that stuff on the web. I, I think I told you at the start offline that I was going to try to avoid the Starfield online, the comments about it,
Yeah.
etc. So until I got to really into the shipbuilding, I didn't look at that at all. So I just went my own way, and I think the first one I did was the Freestar Rangers, just because of the I happened to land on the planet where you have to talk down this guy
Hey,
from killing everyone in the bank or whatnot.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so I end up going through that path, and then along the way there, I end up bumping into the person who in Ryugen or whatever it was called, and I started doing that
Hmm.
one, and then I did the kind of what you would consider maybe the more main side quest, I guess, which was like the whatever the terramorphs or whatever. Like
Yeah,
I ended
yeah.
up doing that one, and then along the way there, I think I committed so many crimes and whatnot. Then I got there was this apparently there was a special way to
Yeah.
unlock the pirate mission or the Crimson Fleet mission. I didn't
Yeah.
do it that way. They just stopped me one day in the street and said, "Hey, do you want to join our gang?"
Oh,
So
okay.
like
Okay.
yeah, so I don't know what I was supposed to do exactly, but well, not
I th-
them, but the the good guys. They stopped me and they said, "Did you want to join?" Like, but I wasn't actually a criminal at the time and all that, so I can't remember why exactly they did that. But I mean, I had
yeah.
stolen enough stuff like to make the Crimson Fleet look like Boy Scouts at this point. So, but
Yeah, I think I had smuggled something to a planet, or I had some contraband or something on my ship, and that's when they stopped me and hauled me off to this other ship where they're like, okay, you have a choice here, blah blah blah, and go undercover or else kind of thing. And that's how I ended up getting into that, if I remember right. But it's
yeah.
quite a while ago now. But
One
yeah,
thing
I
I
mean,
loved actually. Oh, sorry. I was gonna say one thing I loved, but it was kind of more related to the first topic we are talking about, like the space battles and stuff. I got
mhm.
really, as well as the exploring, I got really into stealing ships, like
Yeah.
like taking guys' engines out and especially the Varoons baddies, like taking their ships and like then going and
Okay.
selling it and buying new stuff for my own ship, etc. So I got really into that. Like there's a I think it's the Serpentis system or something where the Varoons hang out. And I was
Hmm.
just going around that over and over again, just
Oh, really? Okay.
stealing one ship after another. Again, another area where I spent like probably 50 hours or whatever, just getting
Stealing
ships,
ships.
selling, killing all the bad guys, getting their cool weapons, selling the ship, buying better weapons for
So
my ship, and doing it again.
let me guess, you weren't with Andrea at that point in your piracy.
So
because
I think we'll talk about that like when we talk about what it didn't get right. Uh,
okay.
but but
Yeah.
no, I
Okay.
wasn't with
Fair
Antonio.
enough. Fair enough. So I mean, the other things that I quite enjoyed, I think the main story arc was well done, and that's apparently a lot of people didn't think that, but I thought the main story arc was really well done as well. And then of course the ending with the new game plus, I thought that was just fantastic. For me, that was it's kind of epic. I don't want to spoil it for people. That haven't played it. So if you haven't played the game and you're actually watching this video, thank you for being here. But just like plug your ears for a few minutes, perhaps. But the way they just kind of stepped you through, like this was your life, and these are the impacts you had, and this is what you. I thought that was super cool,
Oh yeah,
and
I agree. I agree. Like
yeah,
that was very epic as you put it. Like, and when I
yeah,
got to the end, I guess the other thing as well, because I hadn't watched a lot of videos or hadn't watched any videos of it about what I was very careful to avoid spoilers, etc.
yes,
So I was blown away by that. Like I just thought that they really got that down
yeah,
just right, and
yeah,
like it gave you a sense that it was, as I say, you were involved in something epic. What you had done was important, etc.,
yeah,
and it made it feel like something big had happened. Uh,
yeah.
like
It did.
unlike I think other actually Bethesda games haven't always done that a good job of that. Like I think back to Fallout 3, etc., just seemed to end very
Yeah,
abruptly, etc.
exactly.
But this they really hit the nail on the head. I think they really got it did it good this time around.
Yeah.
Um, I enjoyed it a
Uh,
lot.
cool. Cool. Yeah, no, I thought that was epic, and it really, the way it laid the foundation going into New Game Plus, it made me want to keep playing it. And if it wasn't for the fact that, Spider-Man was out and I had bought the silly console and I had the game day one, I would have kept playing Starfield, but I wanted to at least get my money's worth out of the fact I had Spider-Man day one, because I never buy. Yeah, I'm like you. I don't buy games day one, typically speaking. So I
Yeah,
wanted to make sure I played it. Do we want to talk about a few things they got wrong?
there's one other thing I want to say that they got right actually. Well, two
Okay,
things. First of all,
sure.
I want to say as well about the new game plus. Now I've only done it. I think I've done it uh, twice. So I haven't. I'm not one of the guys who've done it like 15 times and seen all the variations and what happens, etc. But I did think it was a very imaginative way of New Game Plus, uh, of executing New Game Plus. I mean, I've played other games that I've gone through New Game Plus, like Witcher 3, etc., and I've enjoyed a lot. But it really was like the same story all over again. This was a
Right.
nice little twist on that. And I think hopefully something that more developers do in the future, like where it's a little bit different the next time around you do it. The
Yeah.
other thing I want to say as well, though, is that, and again, probably the other, I don't know how many times I've said now I've done 50 hours in that and 50 hours in this, etc. So it all adds up, I guess. But the other thing I spent a lot of time doing as well was looking for cool weapons because I didn't think there was a lot of cool weapons in it.
Right.
I really liked the variation of the weapons that they had, like the sniper rifles, and then even the ones with the epic ones with the extra features, etc. I spend a lot of time as well farming bad guys to get those cool weapons, so that
Yeah. That's
I was really kitted out at the end. And
no,
the Varun Inflictor was by far my favorite weapon, my weapon of choice, and I just felt even earlier on in the game when I wasn't like level 100, etc. Once I got I can't remember legendary version or epic version. I can't remember what the terms were now, but once I got one of those, I felt pretty godlike. I was just going through everyone like butter, so that was a lot
yeah.
of fun.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Something it's like I say, it's been a while since I've played it. So you forget, yeah, the weapon variety was really, really well done as well. I think I had a lot of fun. You get, I couldn't tell you what my favorite weapon was called or anything like that at this point, but um, yeah, and even like some of the space powers that you gain as you go along and floating people up to the ceiling and then just having, good time just shooting them to death. stuff. I really enjoyed the combat. I think they did a really good job there. Death from above type mentality, throwing grenades down on guys. That I had a lot of fun doing that too in the low gravity areas, and um, that was one of the things that I did fairly early on was get my what do they call it, the jumps pack or whatever, the
Oh
boost
yeah,
pack or
boost pack.
whatever. Yeah, leveling that right up. Uh, yeah, no, that was really well done. I'm glad you mentioned that. In
There's
terms,
no, sorry, one more thing actually. Now that
sure, sure.
you're one other thing I have enjoyed about it as well, and again, it goes along with the exploring aspect. And for some reason, I'm not sure if they've changed this, but I've noticed it a lot more when I was playing New Game Plus. There's I guess as you flying around the universe in random places or the galaxy in random places, one thing has been cool is coming across these derelict random spaceships, etc. That some of them are like they're haunted, and other ones have got like a big bad monster who've killed all the crew and all that. Like that's also like some of the from the past. Yeah, I like survival horror kind of games as well, but things that are a little
Yeah.
bit spooky and like these ships that you get on there and you can hear the creaking of the ship as it's just lying derelict in space, etc. And there's something in the shadows waiting to jump. That they actually were pretty well done as well. Like I enjoy those as well.
Okay. Yeah, and see, that's something I don't think I really did any of. I don't remember coming across any ships just floating in space. So that's really cool to hear that that's out there. And when I do go back eventually into this game, assuming I ever catch up on some of my backlog that I have now, way too many games to play, not enough time to play them, of course. But I know for sure I'll be going back when the expansion comes out, and that's a topic we have later on as well. Uh, but that's cool. That's really cool. What'd they get wrong? I mean, for me, I think the most egregious sin and the one that you hear people talking about constantly online, or at least at the time, was load screens. The nicknames like load field and stuff like this were out there too. Now playing on PC, they weren't that intrusive. My game time in Xbox is rather limited in comparison, but the load screens were longer on Xbox than they were on PC. Like, I think I'd be hard pressed to find a load screen that was much more than a couple seconds on PC. They were all pretty snappy. I think a lot of that stuff probably ties back. There's probably some game engine limitations, but a lot of it probably ties back to when they started the initial foundation and the design of the game. Apparently, it took them close to 10 years to do it. If you look at what was available 10 years ago, they probably made a lot of design choices based on what they were working with then versus the systems that, were available when they actually released it. That's my guess anyway. I do think in terms of the biggest complaints were it's immersion breaking and it ruins this, it ruins that. They probably could have fixed some of that simply by throwing in animations, right? Like when you go to get into your ship, show them climbing up the ladder and the hatch opening them, and then they're appearing on the other side, and then you fade back into your character and you're live, versus just fading to black and then coming out of that. So I do think there's room for improvement there. What's one of your worst sins that you felt that they had?
Well, for me, like I didn't actually, I wasn't too bothered with the load screens, honestly. Um, I think I told you again offline. I'm learning guitar, so it didn't bother me that much. So whenever I was getting a load string, I just do a little diddly doo doo, and and then we'll be on. Like so, it might honestly, it didn't even agitate me, so that it was in the back of my mind as a complaint. The only thing I would say, but I kind of blame myself for this as well. Whenever you're farming to get a new weapon, etc., it's kind of irritating then. But like once you're on the
Right.
planet, and if you're just going through whatever you're doing, like there's very little, again, the first time you go into the base or whatever, yeah, like there's a small loading screen, etc. But as long as you were going around doing your own thing, I didn't find it that bad. I mean, again,
Hmm.
could it have done it better? Yeah. but it wasn't something that irritated me or took me out of the game. What I had a problem
Right.
with, which I don't think you encountered so much, is the crashing. Like it crashed a
Right.
ferocious amount of times for me. And I played on the Xbox, and I was playing it pretty soon after it came out. I know you had nudged me to get on it like once it did come out. But I was playing it pretty early on, and it was crashing a mother load of times, like sometimes several
Yeah.
times an hour, and that was
Mm.
very irritating. So
Right.
I do think, um, oh, sorry, just on that, like, what now, whether they've made it better or fixed it a little bit, or whether it was due to the amount of time and things I had done and the amount of, I guess,
Saves.
I
I
created
heard
storage.
saves were a problem.
Yeah, like the amount of saves I had and the amount of storage items I had in various places around the universe. I have like a zillion guns that I was storing for I don't know why,
Right.
but like,
Because it's what
I,
you do.
that's what you do because I'm a hoarder,
Yeah.
as you can see in real life as well as in Starfield. But that was that that was definitely immersion breaking. Now, but so
Sure.
I think once you go to New Game Plus, my sense is because it's more of a clean slate, they have less stuff to keep track of. Suddenly, the amount of crashes went way down. Uh, but
Interesting.
but yeah, I that was I was there was some points in it where I was ready to walk away from the game the first run through because it was like crashing 2, 3 times an hour, and I was like, okay, this is
Wow.
ridiculous.
So
And yeah,
that's definitely not a problem that I had. I did have crashes, but how much of that was like I was running a mod for support for the NVIDIA DLSS and whatnot. So, I can't say that it was all the game's fault. Like maybe sometimes it crashed because I was running that mod on top of the game. I don't know, but definitely not a major issue for me at all. Like,
yeah,
it was maybe I'd get a crash every 6 or 8 hours or 10 hours of playtime. Like it just wasn't that bad. Generally speaking, I could play all night, no problem, and just
yeah,
keep on trucking. So yeah, that's unfortunate. I did hear on Xbox, like I mentioned, the save files could be a problem. One of the recommendations for a lot of crashing was to, stay under 10 save files or some dumb thing like that. No excuse. Like it
oh yeah,
shouldn't be a problem. And it's something they should have fixed,
yeah.
right away.
That's a ridiculous restriction, though, to think
It
about putting
is.
on for something that where uh, the whole idea behind it is that you're exploring an epically huge universe.
Mhm.
You're going to be doing it for like I'm sure that my whatever it was 300 or 400 hours, that is probably like minuscule compared to some people who've spent like thousands of hours in it.
Yeah.
And they're upselling the game as something where that is what you do. Like you explore the galaxy, you look at every nook and cranny. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, like I came across warnings about my saves, which I find just ridiculous in general. I would delete like crap loads of save files, and I still get warnings about save files. So, and then I was reading online that oh well, you have to go in and you just don't delete them there, but you have to go offline and delete your whatever is online as well, and then resync it. And I was like, okay,
Oh, geez.
this is just not working well, is what this comes down to. But again, um, that was what almost made me walk away from the game at one point, and I was like, okay, I'm done with this before I had finished the main mission, etc. But I persevered, I stuck through it, like, and thankfully, once I got to the end and I got to New Game Plus, then it seemed to remediate itself. Now, again, whether that's because they fixed anything or whether because suddenly in this universe or this iteration of the universe, I had less saves and therefore and also like I had less things to keep track of, less money, less whatever. I
Right.
don't know. I don't know, but less
It's
items, etc.
interesting. It's interesting. Like, I mean, my list of complaints is pretty small. The load screens, like I said, didn't really bother me. That was more of a a hater complaint or a community complaint. Even guys I know that like the game complained a bit about the load screens. I think from an Xbox perspective, I was disappointed there was no performance mode. Now that might still be something that comes along because they did increase the performance or improve the performance, like with CPU loading, quite significantly. Um, and I would be very surprised if that didn't help improve things on Xbox a lot. Like I know when they first released it, they said areas of the game ran at 60 FPS, but you'd have too many areas where the dips would fall down into the 30s. Uh, Maybe with some of those CPU improvements, those dips maybe were only into the 40s. And I recently just, what is it, a couple weeks ago, they dropped FSR3 on PC. So if they incorporate that into the console, they could use FSR3 to maybe keep a steady 60 FPS, at least give you that feeling of smoothness. So that, I think that would be a big boost from the console side of things. My only other complaints, I mean, the Bethesda face thing with a lot of the NPCs, that look that Bethesda characters often have. I thought that was kind of cheesy, but not unexpected. And the only other thing that kind of bugged me was no city maps, because I found that sometimes you got to find something, or it's like, crap, where was that again? And I wouldn't know where I was in the city, and you open up the map and it's useless.
Yeah.
So it would have been nice to have city maps. I mean, but that's really, I'd be hard pressed to think of anything else that really, I would go, geez, this sucks
Oh,
too,
I've got a
generally
call.
speaking.
I've got a couple for you. First of all,
Yeah.
like
And
they
it
know,
might trigger something with me, right? Because you
yeah,
played it in December still, you were still playing, and I quit by like mid-October, basically. I was done. So,
yeah.
but
No, I think the lack of city maps was a problem for sure. Now, after you put in enough hours into it, you tend to know where things are, etc. But it
mhm,
shouldn't be the case, right? That you have to do that. Like, it's a
yeah,
bit irritating that you go to a new planet, you've got a bunch of stuff to sell, and in Aquila City, you can't remember where the trade authority is. Like, and you're like, where? And there's no way to find it. Almost like, okay, there's
yeah,
signposts randomly put around sometimes, but
yeah,
like so that was irritating. But you touched on something about like I think Alexandra earlier. I felt like one of
Andrea,
the
yeah,
or
Andrea,
yeah, Andrea, sorry. Um,
yeah,
like I found in general the companions and the companion side missions
yes,
were very weak, and I think even in comparison to some of the earlier Fallout games, the companions were not as good. They weren't varied. They were pretty boring, most of them. Like they didn't have any exciting dialogue, and they were all
hypersensitive.
yeah, they're all goody two shoes as well. That was
Yeah,
actually another area where like the
that
bugs came
was
into it. Like sometimes, like as I say, I liked taking over ships. So I would there would be like a whatever a Varun ship that I was taking over. Like I would get on there with what was the other girl's name?
Sarah.
Sarah.
Why do I
Um,
remember the names?
I don't know. I don't know, man. Like, yeah, I'm
I'm
not a good.
normally terrible with names, but
I'm generally pretty bad at games, so I'm just proving that point. But you get on there
yeah,
with Sarah, right? And you'd shoot a bunch of bad guys, and then you'd shoot some random bad guy, and she'd get all upset. And I'm
yeah,
like, and like I would have
yeah,
saved before I would go through it again, and she'd get upset again when I kill the same bad guy. So what would I do? I say, okay, Sarah, I'll do nothing. You kill him, and she'd kill him, and that was fine. And I was like,
yeah,
okay. So I guess we got past that one hump who somehow was I don't know, but in general, like so you're asking about like going around. I was using Basco almost all the way through my initial walkthrough because he didn't complain or uh, like he
yeah,
wasn't hypersensitive about who I was killing or what I was doing. Like he was just like, yeah, you do your thing, I'll be here. He was completely useless in combat, mind you,
right,
but at the same time, he was good for storing stuff, right? Like wait here,
yeah,
hold all these weapons I've picked up from all these bad guys. But yeah, the companions were pretty, and their dialogue was pretty weak as well. I don't
yeah,
think a lot of, I don't think they put a lot of effort or thought into that. Um, the romancing was uh, dull,
so
I
you
guess.
didn't get married then?
Did I get? I think. I think I did get married to Sarah just to see what would happen, like just to go
Okay.
through, because with Sam, I think it was Sam Cole, with Barrett, with Sarah. Um, I didn't get married to all of them, but I wanted to see what they. It was the only thing after I've done all the faction side missions. It was the only kind of missions I could do that were kind of
Right.
interesting. So I went through all of their storylines, etc. But I found them all like dull. I guess I'm trying to think that it was anyone better than the other. Like Sarah's was poor. Uh, I think. Sorry, I'm forgetting her name again. The Varun woman. Uh,
Andrea.
Andrea. Sorry, I don't know why I can't. Oh, that's good. Yeah, but I think Andrea's one was okay. You were hopping from planet to planet, like to find who was killing who or
Yeah.
whatever. That was
That's
kind of
the one.
okay.
That's the one I ended up doing.
Yeah,
Like I ended up marrying her because Sarah was just way hypersensitive. You couldn't even steal something without her getting upset, or at
yeah,
least that's what I found. And at least Andrea was a little more shady in that regard and didn't seem to be too upset if looted something or whatever. And but yeah, I probably should have just hung out with Vasco more, to
yeah.
be
Honestly,
honest.
I think for the amount of effort they put into it, and even like the or sorry, you had to spend. I found quite a lot of time with them to unlock their options to either do their side missions or whatnot, and it really
Yeah,
wasn't worth the effort. And then the fact that there was only four people of all of the possible companions that even had any story of them. I
right.
felt they put in so little effort into that part of it. In my opinion, they might as well not just have done it, right? Like, just don't bother with companions, or just make companions just these blank slates who just go around shooting things, but not have
Y-
moral opinions of themselves, of their own, etc. Because it was just,
Yeah.
it was not well executed in my mind.
Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking with the hypersensitivity aspect of it. I found that really, really annoying. Uh, like, why? You're out there. It's like you say, you can kill all these bad guys, but don't you dare kill that one. And it's
Yeah,
just like it just to me that was more immersion breaking in many respects than any load screen could ever be. Uh, and
I,
it's funny that I didn't remember that until you mentioned it, but um,
it was funny as well because for whatever reason, and maybe they'll fix this with the DLC, like you could pick up other companions, like named companions, like from the pirate or from the Crimson Fleet, etc. But they didn't have any side stories with them. They didn't have anything to go into. Like, why not? Like, why
right.
when you pick up this? I can't remember what the guy's name was, as usual. But there's another pirate that you could hook up with and do side missions with. He was trying to encourage you in one of the early missions to get rid of the main guy and the Crimson Fleet. I don't remember what his name was, but
Yeah.
why didn't he have a side story? Why didn't he have like, oh, before I became a pirate, this happened, and what yada yada yada? Or some of the people that you there's a guy as well. He looks a bit like Sam Coe that you meet up in a bar in Aquila as well, who's got a big scar on his face, and he seems to be, oh, this guy is kind of interesting, but then he isn't. Like, he has
Okay.
no
Yeah, I
story.
don't remember that one at all.
Yeah.
But
So that was pretty disappointing. And I think back to some of the companions, like in Fallout 4. There was this reporter woman that she had a good story. I seem to recall. There's a woman,
yeah,
an Irish woman.
you played a ton of Fallout 4, and that was
Yeah,
a game that uh, I think I put about 20 hours in and I just never finished it.
you went.
But
I seem to recall you went down the wrong corner. You met someone who you couldn't beat.
yeah, I can't remember, but it was something like that. No, that was New Vegas when I did that. I
Okay.
turned right when or turned left when I should have turned right or something at the one intersection, and I ended up and it was just I couldn't get away from this area where I was getting killed every few minutes. And you told me, "Oh yeah, yeah, you got to turn right at that intersection instead, and then you'll stay in." And so I ended up going way back to a previous save and then doing that, and then it became okay.
Yeah.
But Fallout 4, I think it was more just there was such a heavy emphasis on base building and stuff that I just didn't really want to do.
Uh,
I
and
think
that's
that's
kind of something that I like, right?
yeah,
But just on a completely different topic, then I think another area where this goes back again to the initial promise of what Starfield was going to be. But in a galaxy where humanity are spread far and wide, it felt pretty empty. Like there was only three or
Hmm.
four real cities, and of those, only Jemison felt like a real big city. Like Aquila was like a
Yeah,
small little town, and even
yeah,
like whatever that like Neon, like that was like a couple of stories and a 100 yards either
mhm,
way. Like it was like they
yeah.
were all like small little. It was almost like a small space station or an oil rig or something like that. And, like
They needed
it
a
was,
Coruscant,
yeah, like
like,
I even like
yeah,
that's what Jemison should have been like.
yeah,
Like you've got this, and it was okay. That was a decent sized capital. You need a shuttle bus to get around without walking too much. Fair enough.
yeah.
But then
But where were
right
the other
outside the border,
cities?
yeah, right outside the border, and for the rest of the planet, it's like a jungle. It's like
Yeah,
what the hell?
yeah,
It didn't make any sense to me whatsoever.
yeah. There should have been like it should have been a planet like Earth or something, where at least there's another dozen major cities you could go to on the planet or something. Uh, that would have made a lot more sense to me. But it's yeah. I mean, I think I jumped off of. You get that apartment when you become
Yeah,
a
yeah,
citizen or whatever. I was out on the balcony and I jumped off of that and then used my little jetpack thing to float myself outside the city walls and did a bunch of exploring. But you're right. I mean, it's just there's nothing out there really other than a jungle and some animals to kill and whatnot. You find a few little goodies here and there, but it does seem odd to have that one city and that's the whole planet. Like I think they
yeah.
should have had a lot more of that just on the planet itself.
Yeah,
Um,
and the way
yeah.
then they say like Jemison is the I guess the one faction's main city, and Aquila is the other faction's main city. But Aquila is like it's
A
hard to
dump.
believe. Yeah, it's hard to believe more than a couple of hundred people could live in Aquila. Like so,
Yeah.
where is everyone else?
Yeah.
Where's the other 10
Yeah. It's like an
billion
old
of
west,
yeah.
where's the horses and carriages, right? It's muddy streets and yeah, it's a little weird.
That's
A
something
little bit
I felt
weird.
like it made me have to suspend really belief a lot to say like, okay, this is all of humanity. We got like
Hmm.
two, like one big city, which again,
Yeah.
when you look at it, in its borders is probably again the size of the of what you call it, not even the size of Kamloops or something. But anyway,
Yeah.
so you got
Yeah.
one half-size city, then a couple of little outposts type things, and then nothing. Then like there's
Yeah.
one person living out in the wilderness by themselves, or a science center with like four people in it. Like, where's
Yeah.
all the billions of people in humanity? Like, that didn't make any sense to me whatsoever. Now, again, I understand the difficulty in doing it, but to me, and I guess this goes back to uh, a general kind of concern. You could have gone all the same amount of content into like 2 or 3 star systems, right? You didn't need to be flying across all the universe, etc. Like it wasn't really that there wasn't that much there. You
Hmm.
could have a couple of planets, like maybe a cluster of 10 or something, a couple of star systems near each other, and that would have been enough content then to fill up those areas, I would think. But yeah, like again, I don't know if it was lazy or like I'm sure it would have been uh, uh, an epic effort to make something that really felt like well populated, but it made no sense. I think there was like Jemison, there was Aquila, there was New Hope, or Hope Town, I guess, which was again was like was more the size of a factory, a large factory,
Yeah.
and Neon, and only Jemison seemed halfway big. That part just didn't make any sense to me. So that kind of irritated me a little bit that there was not that much to explore. And then the final thing, which is kind of related, was the and again it's related to the limitations, I guess, is that after you've done the faction missions, after you've done the main mission, a lot of the side quests are just again rinse and repeat. Go and find this bad guy, kill him, and you get
Yeah.
some money. So
Yeah.
there's
To me,
some really
that's
good.
kind of
Yeah,
just the thing that fit into the meh sort of. It's not that they
yeah,
got it terribly wrong. It's just that it was uninspiring.
yeah. Yep.
At
That's
best,
that's
it was
fair.
just,
That's fair. That's the meh
yeah,
category.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, in general, not a lot that was terrible, but definitely room for improvement, I think. And I guess maybe we'll see lessons learned, hopefully, when they drop their expansion later on this year. Um, if we move on from there, then I think we already kind of talked about how much time we put into the game. Uh, what do you think you were right about, or what were we wrong about? For me, I think, ah, man, what was I right about? The gunplay. I mean, I'm basing this on just what I saw in their like 45 minutes that they showed us. I think the gunplay was really good. A
Mhm.
huge improvement from the Fallout series, and that's kind of the impression I got. I think from watching that. And we talked a little bit about what we were wrong about, I guess, at the intro too. Like, it wasn't quite what I expected based on what they showed us either. There was a lot of stuff that was just a bit different. Um,
So I,
so
I I think I was kind of right about like how scaled back it would need to be actually the game it was. I felt
mhm,
like that the promises that they were making were not going to be what it was going to be. I just like I
yeah,
don't I
a
I
little
couldn't.
optimistic.
Yeah, my little brain couldn't wrap my head around like how can this kind of either they're really wildly exaggerating what it's going to be, or this game is going to be the greatest game of all time. And I think it was somewhere in the middle. It was a really good game in my mind, but again, it wasn't what they said it was going to be. The thing I got wrong about it is I thought I would enjoy the outpost building a lot, and in the end game, it was pretty irrelevant. Like I think there was one or two side missions where you needed to have an outpost for getting a lot of gear from one spot to another. But really, it was a complete irrelevancy. You didn't need an outpost to really uh, expand your character or to add to the storyline, etc. So I think I built one outpost outside Jemison, and then I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing this for. Like, it's easier for me to go to a planet and just mine it versus like building all these machines. And like all I ended up doing was making another place to store weapons and stuff. Like, and send all the companions I was tired of. I said, okay, you can go to that outpost then. But like it, it was a huge. Like I enjoyed the like let's say they weren't called outposts, I guess, but whatever they called them in Fallout 4, I enjoyed it a lot more there because they used to get attacked and stuff regularly. So you'd have all these weapons and these guns and stuff set up to protect your. So again, it wasn't that well fleshed out in Fallout 4 either. But I found it in Starfield. There was a complete missed opportunity. They had all the elements to make it good, but it just didn't really leverage it at all in the main game. Like it just was not required.
Yeah. See, and I was right. I knew I wouldn't enjoy base building, I guess, but I did try a little bit. I messed around with it a bit, and I just didn't see the point in it, to be perfectly honest. And maybe it does tie into shipbuilding or something if you want to build stuff from scratch. I have no idea because I didn't really explore that. Maybe it's something I'll try a little bit again in the new game plus or next time I play through it. Maybe the expansion will require it or something. Who knows? But uh, that was something I knew I wouldn't like, and I definitely didn't. Shipbuilding, I think, is an area that or at least the ship modifications, didn't really know what to expect with that. I probably enjoyed it more than I thought I would,
Mhm.
even though I didn't go again to the extreme that you did. But again, I didn't spend as much time in the game, so my modifications were a little bit more simplistic, a little bit more limited. But It was typically around adding firepower and more nuclear power and better shields and stuff just to survive out in space a little bit more effectively than I was maybe in the beginning. Uh,
But that's one of the main differences, I guess, in my mind at least, anyway. That whereas when you for lots of missions involved fighting in space. Number one.
right.
And just exploring space required you to defend yourself at times. And
Yeah.
if you didn't have enough space in your cargo hold, you couldn't do certain side missions. So it was required, to a degree, to get involved, either steal a ship or get a ship that was better than the initial ship you started off with. Whereas with outpost building, it's like, okay, so I get this. Maybe you can use it as a way to make money. But honestly, I felt fairly early on in the game. I had more money than I knew what to do with. You go in, you'd kill a bunch of bad guys, you'd take all their weapons, you'd sell them,
Yeah.
and like then you'd have enough money to buy something else. And after going through a bunch of those, even there was one bug early on, and I've come across it two or three times where I think it was around what was the name of that space station? Uh, Actually, no, I think it was around the Mars space station, the Deimos building station, whatever that was called. I can't recall. Um,
Yeah. I think I know the one you mean.
Yeah, but there was a crap loads of ships around it, and for some reason, a big space battle started off, and
Oh,
I was just I probably strumming my guitar, not paying much attention, and then I was like, I heard all these things coming on the radio. Oh, we'll sort you out. How dare you? You should never have crossed Galbank or whatever. And they all started shooting at each other. I was like, oh, this is interesting. And my system actually everything started getting slower because it was like dozens and dozens of ships shooting at each other and blowing each other. So what did I do? I didn't shoot at anyone. I just went around picking up all the debris, and especially the Galbank ones. They were leaving 20,000 credits or 30,000 credits. So and there was a bunch of Galbank
that's
ships
funny.
that were being involved. So I made a killing. I was just like, yeah, yeah, okay, you guys carry on, and they're all shooting at each other. And I think it was the trade authority were shooting at Galbank, who in turn were shooting at someone else, or the Free Star Collective. I don't know. I don't know what someone did or who bumped into who,
That's
but
hilarious.
yeah. But it happened like two or three times. But yeah, so that
Yeah.
was one way to make money as well.
See, yeah, I mean, we were talking about ships and, having to survive and build bigger, better ships. And for the most part, I used the original ship for quite a while. I
Mm.
upgraded it a fair bit. And it wasn't until I got the ship from the Freestar Galactive quest that that became my main ship. And it was mainly because it had way more cargo storage. Um, and I flew that one for the rest of the game. I don't think short of upgrades that I did to it, that was basically it. But maybe if I spent three times as much time in there, I'd have had to do more. But for the most part, I had a good time just using the ships that I had with
Yeah.
upgrades. It was fun.
One problem with the ships, actually, well, if you're into piracy and stealing ships, I found, and again, it kind of goes to the lack of a map, but when you're hijacking ships, especially some of the larger ships, I was going up and down ladders like crazy, looking for where the cockpit was, and I was like, oh my god, I couldn't, and I was like, I've seen this place like 15 times before, and you know, just because you're on the next level doesn't mean you can get to all the places in that level. You have to go down and then you have to go back up again. And yeah, that
Yeah.
was a bit of a mess. I think it was only when I got the power to see the space power. And this is like if we're talking about the kind of meh characteristics of it, like the space powers you mentioned that were pretty cool. Again, I felt it was cool, and I used the one a lot where you get to see your enemy through rocks and stuff, or through the
Yeah, through
spaceships.
walls and
Yeah,
yeah.
through walls in the spaceship. So that was how I navigated. So, oh, there's still some bad guys over there. Um, I had to find my way over there then. But again, I didn't feel like it added that much to the game. It certainly didn't fundamentally change it. That now that you're a super powered god, Suddenly like combat is completely different. I still felt with my souped up Varun Inflictor was a more effective weapon than any of these starborn
The other
powers that
powers, yeah.
I'd gotten, So that was like, yeah, I think it's another area that they can expand upon, I think, in the future, and make that more fundamental to your character and to the game. Because to me, it was, yeah, it's good, it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool seeing what powers, that do what. Like, one thing I used in terms of resource gathering when I needed it was, you pick up something that is rare, and then you on a plant, and then you can regenerate it, so you pick it up again like after a few seconds. So like that was kind of handy, but in general, I found I didn't use the powers that much, other
Right.
than the seeing guys through walls and stuff.
Yeah, I used that one, and the odd time I'd float people up to the ceiling or whatever. If they were hiding behind something and I wanted to be able to just shoot them, I would
Yeah.
do that. But it wasn't it wasn't as effective perhaps as maybe what they intended, or I didn't use it as much as they probably thought I would as a gamer or player in the game. But I still had fun with them. I
Mm.
think invisibility, wasn't that another one? You could go invisible if I remember
But
right.
you already, like, after you upgrade yourself a certain amount of times, you can just become invisible anyway. So like if you
Yeah.
so like what I think they just, you would think, right, if you're in a world where you're running around with a gun shooting guys and suddenly you get superpowers, that would be, no pun intended, a game changer. But
Yeah.
I felt like it wasn't. One other thing I did use a
Yeah.
couple of times, there was one or like I was pretty overpowered, especially with my weapons, etc. But every now and again, you'd come across like a few enemies or a bunch of enemies at once in a close quarters, and it would be a little bit difficult to take down. Um, One thing I did, because I was playing on very hard as well, by the way. Like
Okay.
after going through it for a certain amount of time, I felt in general the game was very very easy. The combat was very very easy, so I souped up the very hard, fairly well, maybe midway through my first run through. Um, and but on occasion I come across an enemy that was tough, and then I'd use the slow down power, like just slow everyone down a little bit so I could take little pot shots at them and do a couple of headshots,
Right.
and thin out the crowd, so to speak. But yeah, again, I like the idea of the superpowers, but they weren't as well utilized as they could have been. And something else that was a bit meh as well was, and again, we've touched on this earlier. I think in general the dialogue wasn't the best. Like it was a bit all cookie cutter, not that interesting. Everyone was very,
Yeah.
especially the Constellation crew, were all very earnest, very like how they were going to change the universe. And I was like, yeah, yeah, not too interested. Like no one, I don't think anything there really. There wasn't anything that was too compelling. I compared this to a game like The Witcher 3, which as you know, I'm a big fan of. And some of the side quests there, some of the dialogue, some of the acting is exceptionally good. So that you really get drawn into some of the side stories, even minor characters. Even
Hmm.
for the major characters there, I was like, yeah, I'm not too interested in whether Sarah lives or dies. What you gonna do, So yeah, like to me, that was fairly disappointing.
Right. Yeah. Definitely had it had some meh moments. But overall, I don't want that to take away, if anyone that's actually watching and listening to us rambling on, uh, the general feeling in my feeling anyway is it was an awesome game.
Yeah, it was
Definitely
an
had its
exceptionally good
meh
game.
moment.
And
Yeah.
I did. I think it's just easier to go on a little bit, especially if you're passionate about it, which I was. It's
Yeah.
easier to go on about the bits that were almost like not quite there,
Hmm.
because you want them. I mean, personally, I felt like a lot of people were waiting for Bethesda to fail with this one. Is the sense I get?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
the haters were out very very quickly, I felt, with Starfield. Um,
Yep.
so I don't mean that to be what anyone would come away with at all, based on my experience, because I love the game. Uh, and if I go on about some of the areas where I didn't have as much, it's just because I felt with a little bit of tweaking, it could have been like the best game ever.
Yeah.
But it wasn't quite there, but it was still an epically good game in my mind.
Yeah. So no game of the generation, but it was my game of the year last year. Definitely. It was the favorite game I played last year,
I'd
without a
agree with
doubt.
that. I'd agree with that. And as well, like yourself, when I was playing it obsessively, and when
Mhm.
I was playing it, I wasn't playing anything else for a good few months.
Yeah.
From probably like whether it came out in September, I believe, and from
Hmm.
like October through December, I was pretty much playing that exclusively, nothing else.
Yeah. The only other game that I would say, I tended to be exclusive to was probably Hogwarts Legacy,
Mm,
which is surprising because I'm not a Harry Potter fan at all. Like, I think I saw the first movie, that's it. I had no interest in seeing any others, but the game I thought was great. Like, it was very good.
yeah,
And I did enjoy it. And as get more powers, and that's a game where you use them for sure.
yeah.
And it was pretty fun. I don't know if you ever played it, but if you haven't, it's definitely worth a playthrough, for sure.
Yeah, I'm never like I think you touched on earlier. I'm never that up to on the I'm going to try to be better, but I've never been that much up on the latest and greatest games.
Hmm.
So I always tend to be like probably almost a year behind. It's just
Yeah,
because Starfield came out on Game Pass, then it was a no-brainer, right?
yeah, yeah. Well, and there's going to be a lot of Game Pass games this year, so some of my most anticipated ones like Hellblade 2. I don't know if you played the first Hellblade, but it's in Game Pass, so you might want to play through that before a lot of these other ones drop. Avowed, I'm looking forward to. Indiana Jones, I think, looks very promising as well. I'm looking forward to that one. A lot of good Game Pass games coming this year. But in terms of this conversation, though, like I can speak a bit to the experience on PC versus console. Uh, for me, the 30 FPS thing on console is disappointing. I think did I touch on that, or was that when we were talking beforehand? I can't remember if I touched on that earlier. I do have some hope. I think that there's the potential for a 60 FPS mode, especially with FSR3 being added to the game now. The Series X and Series S will support that. I don't know that they'll get a 60 FPS on the S, but it might be possible with the X now, given the CPU fixes that have gone in. Performance improved dramatically on PC. Like when it launched, I was in the neighborhood of, with ultra settings, probably for the most part, 75 to maybe 90 frames per second, maybe 100 at times. Now, with the CPU enhancements in there, that it's properly leveraging all the threads that are available, that was a good 30 to 40 FPS increase. Like I'm well over 100 frames per second all the time, 140. I jumped in the other night or yesterday for those few minutes. And it was, in space, I was higher than my refresh rate on my monitor, 150, 160 frames per second. So I think there's definitely potential for that part of it to maybe happen on the consoles. Uh, the combat itself, controller, mouse, keyboard, doesn't matter. It just feels a lot more crisp once you're up over 60 frames per second. It just feels better. Graphically speaking, I think the game looks great on the Series X. I mean, yeah, my PC is more powerful, blah blah blah, but whatever. It looks a little better, but generally speaking, the Xbox is very comparable. The Series X, you're not missing out a lot on graphics if you're playing it on the Series X. That's for sure. So I think the biggest thing, if they could eke in a performance mode somehow, get it up to 60 frames per second, even if it costs a little bit in graphics, it would be well worth it, I think, and it would be a big bonus for the console players. That's probably my main thing. The load screens are a little longer on console too, but generally speaking, the game's very comparable, other than frame rate. So
Yeah, that's more your gig than my gig, to be honest. Like a lot of, as you
yeah,
know, I'd as soon the next game I play for a long time, it could end up being an indie game, which the graphics are not a factor. To me, it's all down to the gameplay, and the gameplay was generally good. I could have done without the crashing, but
yeah.
yeah, like I didn't for one. I thought the graphics were good. The You mentioned the Bethesda look of people, and I agree with that. It was better than the Fallout 4 graphics, and that was better than the Fallout 3 graphics, which you'd expect over time, right? But
Yeah.
even still, I didn't. I didn't once think that the frame rate is too slow on this. It wasn't something that came into my radar at all, to be honest. So
Well, and
yeah,
once
like
you're
I'm
playing
sure
for,
if I played it on the PC.
I
Yeah,
assume
sorry,
we
go
got
ahead.
that delay between us again. I was just going to say, once you're playing at 30 FPS for, 10, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, it starts to feel normal, and you don't really notice it anymore. That judder that is so hard hitting when I first get on console, I'm like, oh my God, like it's just across the screen. It feels pretty rough, but once I've been playing for, a half hour or so, it fades into the background and it feels pretty decent. But yeah, anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there either. It's definitely more of a me thing, though. I am spoiled with the high frame rate, and I do like it. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But any what I mean, we talked a lot about, you know pretty much everything, I think, at this point. But if you could ask, if you had a wish list for like three improvements that you would like to see today, what would those be?
Well, I'd say stop the crashing, but I think they either my new game plus or they themselves have already fixed that. Um, there's a bunch of bugs in it. Like, and again, none of them are necessarily uh, there's sometimes like where there's one that I think has gotten some fair amount of online attention as well. You're supposed to bring a package to the chip technician in Neon, uh, but the ship technician for whatever reason is probably like half a kilometer away from the Neon station at the bottom of the ocean,
Oh, okay.
and you can actually go and find him because based on what people I don't know who the hell managed to find him, but anyway, based on their instructions, I managed to go over find him, using my boost pack to get across, and but yeah, you can see his outline just standing there like the ship technician at the bottom of the ocean, and but you can't
That's
interact with
hilarious.
him or anything. So there's a little mission that I could never get off my to-dos where like give the package to this guy. So there's a bunch of bugs like that. Like again, none of them
Sure.
are there not many of them are affecting the main missions, but like some side missions are a bit buggy. Um
Interesting.
there's like
Yeah.
one thing I found quite annoying because to me again, like I upgraded all my guns, I upgraded all my ships, etc. But especially whether it's your armor or whether or your whatever your spacesuit or you have to have certain materials in order to be able to upgrade them. But there's no
Hmm.
way for you to track what you need. Like I can't say, oh, I need 100 iron or whatever to get this new armor built. That's not a real example, but maybe it's like 10 lumps of steel or something like that. I don't know. But
Right.
there's no way for me to remember or to track what it is. So like as I'm kind of going, okay, I find like I'm missing these resources, and then I go to the shopkeeper half an hour later or whatever. I can't
You
remember like the two
forget.
or three things that I needed to get. I'm like, did I need 10 pieces of copper or did I need 100 pieces of copper? I can't recall. That's kind of like something I seem to recall in Fallout again. You like when you knew that you were looking for certain materials, it would come up in one of your menus as something that, tagged somehow that you're looking for it. Or you could tag things and say, okay, I want some of this stuff. That was a minor irritant, but it was something that I think you could fix pretty easily.
Hmm.
And then the other thing that was irritating was in its shipbuilding. I know you weren't as into the shipbuilding, um, and I'll say one more time, I love the game, but
Yeah.
because I got so in depth into it, I found a lot of these things irritating. But if you're into
Hmm.
shipbuilding a lot, every time you can have these armories and ships, right? So you can, and you have like the mannequins, and you have where you put your guns and all this kind of junk. And every time you make any even minor modification to the ship, they all go into your cargo hold. They all go off the and it's so
Okay.
irritating that
Yeah.
so you end up not using it because I don't want to have to because I usually have a crap load of guns in my armor are in my cargo hold, and I don't want to go, okay, which are the ones that I wanted to display and I wanted to keep, and I have to go through them all. So it's like I
Yeah,
ended
that
up
would be irritating.
I just ended up like putting them all into a big crate or a couple of crates on my ship, then taking them all out onto my inventory and weighing like 700 pounds or whatever for a few minutes, going out the ship technician, upgrading it, and then going back in and putting them all back in. That's a really
Eh,
dumb
Yeah.
limitation. So there's a couple of things like that I think they could fix straight away.
Quality of life. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So for me, probably would have had more feelings like that had I played it more and realized those were even issues because I never got into putting anything on display or anything like that. It was just all in my inventory anyway, so I never noticed stuff like that. But I think some quick wins, at least from a online community perspective, they could fix the load screen issue. I think just by adding those animations.
yeah,
Like if you think of a game like God of War, when you're moving around in the realms, you're walking around that ring. That's a load screen, right? And then, oh, hey, you have some conversation that's taking place while you're doing it. And then the door pops up in front of you and you go through it. It's a one long load screen, is all that really is. They could do things like that, like with the takeoff animation when you leave the planet, right? It's just a load, it's loading in the background as you exit the planet and get into space. So a little more widespread use of that. I'd love to see a performance mode on console. I'd probably be more inclined to use the cross save features and play on console, like sitting in my chair, lazy boy there every once in a while. And the other thing, and this is a dumb one because we kind of talked about it before with the flying between planets, but I think if you're going to sit there and take the time to try and fly to a planet and spend 7 or 8 hours doing it, when you get there, you should at least be able to bloody like select a landing location and land on it. I think that type of stuff seems really weird to me that you would fly all that way and then get there and not be able to do anything and have to use the fast travel to go to the spot where you already are just so you could land on it. Little details like that, I think, would go a long way to dispelling a lot of the community complaints and the hate online. Which brings us to another potential thing we could talk about is why was there so much hate? Um, and honestly, I think, and this sounds dumb, but a lot of it comes down to console warring. A lot of the hate that I saw anyway was just people upset that it was an Xbox exclusive. That wasn't originally, it was slated to be on PS5. And as a weird example of something like that, the the number of people when the rumor was out saying that it was coming to PlayStation, the number of people that were PlayStation, or let's say Starfield haters, or the game was meh, not that great, it's a 6 or 7 out of 10. And these are like YouTube personalities that are primarily PlayStation people. They're all saying they would buy it when it comes on PlayStation. Well, if the game's not that good and you already played it on Xbox, why would you buy it again to play it on PlayStation? I think, a lot of it was fake outrage and fake hate. I think they just wanted to complain about it. And so they did. The game just wasn't that bad. And a lot of the complaints were really just, hey, this game sucks and it's always going to suck. And it's star failed and bore field and all these things, right?
mhm,
Um, and a lot of it came from people that frankly didn't even play the game. David Jaffe, the God of War originator guy that first, invented the game. um, for Sony. Like he was doing his live show, and the guy comes on, and he's like, "Oh yeah, no, it's a missed opportunity. It's not good." And he was taking call-ins from viewers, and David's like, "Well, what part of it really? What you're saying, this and that. Like, what part of it really got you? Was it the part in the beginning, where you had to burn the bodies and you had no choice, but you just had to do it, and they forced you into that choice?" Well, yeah, that was one of the things. Well,
Mm,
we know there was no bodies to burn at the beginning of the game, right? Guy obviously didn't play it, but he was hating on it. And
yeah,
I think there was a lot of that online anyway. And that's my personal take. I don't know how in tune you were with what was going on in the
not at
hate
all. Not at all.
categories, but
I like, I
you
like,
know,
I'm genuinely, and I know everyone says this, but I genuinely don't give a shit about Xbox
yeah,
versus PlayStation. I think you know
yeah,
that about me by now. Like
yeah,
I've owned every Xbox and every PlayStation of every generation.
yeah,
So now, do I tend to, and I don't even think it's because I prefer one. Initially, I didn't like the Xbox controller. This is going
hmm,
into a whole different topic, but just explaining where I'm coming from. I didn't like the
yeah,
Xbox controller. I like the PlayStation controller, so I tended to play that more. Um, but now I like the Xbox controller a lot, possibly more than the PlayStation controller. So it's really like, I don't know what game is exclusive. Like I like Uncharted, as you know. I like Ghost of Tsushima, which I'm not sure, is that an exclusive. I think it is.
it
Um,
is, yeah,
yeah. And but I also like Starfield, right? So it's whatever is exclusive, and if there's a new game that comes out that comes on both, I'll probably buy it wherever it's on sale at a good price first. That's so I am completely agnostic in more ways than one, but I am completely agnostic in respect of what console. So it may be that there was some hating from Sony fans. If it was, it didn't come into my stratosphere whatsoever. I just noticed there was a lot of people hating on it, saying that it hadn't delivered on what it promised. And I kind of see, like we talked at length, we don't need to go through it again about the size of the universe or how empty the universe is or repetition or whatever. I can see where they're coming from, but I think the level of vitriol directed towards the game is completely out of proportion to some of the limitations that it had. So
yeah,
I think that people were like I said, I think in a way Bethesda set themselves up to fail by overselling it a little bit at the start. But I kind of think,
mhm,
and on the flip side, I kind of think, yeah, but you gotta hype it up. You want people to play it, right? So you got to talk it up a bit. I don't know where the right balance is, but I I, uh, I had said to you, I think uh, on the original video, that I worried that it wasn't going to be what they say it is, and they'll probably people will shit all over them for that reason. And I think that's what I thought it was a little bit. And then obviously I experienced the crashing a lot. Now I don't think that's unique to Starfield. I mean, I know Cyberpunk went through it as well.
mhm.
I know that actually, I think it's a thing with Bethesda games in general. Honestly, it's just that,
I
uh,
was just thinking that, like the
like,
Fallout games, a lot of them are
yeah,
buggy and crashy.
I remember when I was playing Fallout 3. I think we both started at the same time. I stopped because it was so buggy, and creatures going around with no eyes, or creatures going around with only eyes, or something like like a.
Floating in space.
Yeah. So like I was like, okay, this sucks. And then then I patched the crap out of it. Like, and a few months later, I went back to it, and it was a good game. And then
Yeah,
Fallout 4, I played I waited all the DLC to be available in Fallout 4 before I picked it up. So I don't think it was unique to Starfield, but it was very buggy. I found like there was,
yeah,
well, it was crashing a lot, and there was buggy parts. But again, to the extent that it wasn't a good game, no. But I can see where people can take pot shots at it. But again, completely in my mind out of proportion to the the game. I think you have to look at the broader game, and is this a good game with great ambition and well executed, generally speaking? And I think the answer is
yeah,
yes. Does it have problems? Also, yes.
yeah, for sure. And you made me think of something in Fallout 3 because you brought it up. But remember those, what were they called? Death claws or something up in the top? Would
Yeah,
be the northeast end of the map, I think. And I can remember
yeah.
running away, having not saved my game for many hours, like a dummy. And I hopped into like a kind of a treed area to sort of get some, something in between me and them because I'm picking away at the thing. And, eventually I was just underpowered for where I was, and then getting stuck and being
Mm,
unable to move. And it couldn't kill me, but I couldn't move. And realizing at that moment, dear Lord, I haven't saved this game for like 3 hours,
mm.
and having to just give up and reload a previous save. But I never ran into anything like that in Starfield, nothing even close. So I think overall, it probably is their least buggy game release in some time, at least based on the experience I had on PC. Obviously, I didn't have the crashing you did, but generally speaking, I didn't run into any mission breaking bugs. I was always able to complete what I had to do, and never the guy at Neon was available for me to walk up to. I didn't have to go finding him at the bottom of the ocean anywhere.
Mm.
uh but generally speaking, I think it was a pretty solid release for the most part. uh you know Save
I think
for the fact you had all that crashing.
I think as well, like you have to be, but a game of this size, even Witcher 3 was crap buggy as hell when it was released. I think of an open a game of this size, if you're going to wait till you have all the bugs fixed before releasing it, you're going to be like 20 years per game because
Yeah,
it's only when you get out to the community and you see people who are storing like 1,000 weapons or whatever, idiots like me, that you start saying, okay, this starts being a strain on the game and needs to be fixed. But it's I think in a way, I don't know what the solution for that is because other than releasing it, I don't know how you're going to find some of these more
yeah.
obscure things, right?
Exactly. Sometimes you just have to get it out there and find out what's not working right. It might be an area where AI eventually can test the games and find a lot of the obscure bugs for you before you get it out into the public's hands. But you'll need a well-trained AI to do some of the idiot things that people do. So,
Yeah, well, I mean, the main thing is though that they will fix them, which I do hope that they are doing. And I haven't been keeping track. I know you were looking at them, but I haven't been keeping track of their patch notes and whatnot. But
mhm.
I hope that they will remediate some of these issues that have been broken. There's been some things. I actually noticed that there was some exploits that people described online that had been patched. I think they're a bit more focused on patching the exploits than the bugs, which I think maybe your priorities are a little bit off there because if people want to
Yeah,
exploit it, they'll find a new way. Whereas like just fix the bugs, that's the main thing. And if you want to play the game, let's say in quotes, fairly, then you can be aware of an exploit but not take advantage of it.
yeah,
But yeah, like again, as long as they fix them, I think that's the main thing.
yeah, for sure, for sure. So, DLC Shattered Space is coming this fall. I'm assuming you'll make a return to the game. What are you hoping to see out of the DLC?
Whew. Obviously, new faction or major storyline. Obviously, like something I
Yeah,
would like to see. Maybe more than one. It's hard to know what like with New Game Plus, and some people will have been in like 10 iterations of New Game Plus or 10 plus
yeah,
iterations. Um, so I'm not sure, like everyone won't be at the same spot when they do it. So I guess what I would like them to do is somehow take advantage of that even more by maybe changing up the universe more substantively and
yeah,
really making it different. But again, maybe that's what they have in mind anyway. I haven't read anything. I'm
yeah.
very
I'm
much
I'm flying blind on it too. I
yeah.
don't have a clue what the plan is for it.
Yeah, but I do that on purpose because, like, again, like
Yeah,
whenever I come to a new movie or TV show, I want to block myself off from everything because I like to be surprised.
yeah,
So, but I do think they'll take advantage. I do hope rather that they will take advantage of New Game Plus because I do think that is a very cool idea to have. I don't think it's fully fleshed out. Like I haven't come across in my, I think again, 2 times I've gone through New Game Plus, I don't think I've come across anything that's significantly different. But I do see the potential that because you have this foreknowledge of what's going to happen, etc., that you could really shake it up a lot, like and do things really differently, or people react really differently to you, or whatnot. Um,
Yeah.
what else? Yeah, and again, like maybe as well, like I felt that the outpost building was completely irrelevant to the game, and
Hmm.
people may enjoy it for just making building houses and whatnot, but I felt like it wasn't fundamental to the story at all. It would be
Yeah.
good if whether it was part of the main side quest or the main DLC or a side quest in DLC, that became more a more important part. And
More
similarly, as I said
relevant.
earlier, yeah, similarly with the powers, right? Like that, like
Yeah.
suddenly your powers are fundamental to, you can't do it without them. That would be
Yeah.
what I would hope.
Yeah. I mean, myself, I'm obviously another great storyline to follow. That would be amazing. Maybe a few more faction quests, things of that nature. But uh, on top of that, I'm not looking for anything revolutionary in terms of, the new game plus. For me, I'd be more interested in seeing just because I was quite happy with all of that. But again, I've only played through the main story once, right? So I haven't played as much as you. I'd like to see some of those other things, my wish list, right? Performance mode, maybe fixing that immersion issue with the loading screens, like really kind of clean up a lot of the things that were, that we considered misses, maybe better companions for the new DLC. That are a little less sensitive and willing to run away from you in shock and horror of the thing that you just did. Maybe show some displeasure, sure, whatever, but to just run off, that's it, I can't talk to you ever again, boom, gone, seems kind of ridiculous, right? So, hopefully they tidy up some of that stuff. And yeah, I just want another great story because I love the main quest line. I loved all those side quests. uh I'm looking forward to getting back out into space and playing through it. And more odds are pretty good. I'll spend some time in Starfield again before I do like actually get to that DLC launch. That's for sure.
I think so as well. And what you mentioned there, actually, I should have said that as well. Was or I should have thought of that as well. The Some new companions, or maybe tweak the existing companions. Maybe in a new game
Yeah.
plus, Sarah is suddenly more of a badass and like more
Yeah.
attitude, or
Yeah, exactly.
something like that would be good as well, because I think a couple of new DLC or sorry, new companions would be good in the DLC,
Yeah.
who are maybe a little bit more like in the gray area versus goody two shoes.
Yeah. I'd love to see that because it just felt a little bit too um righteous for me, I guess.
Yeah,
I like to be able to just sometimes you just want to be able to kill people, right? And not have everyone freak out around you. You're the
yeah,
captain, damn it.
yeah, and I've just killed several hundred people. Why is this one so important?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I think that answers the other question. Will we go back to it? I think that's unanimous here in saying yes. Um, but what do you think the future is for Starfield? I mean, they got this one DLC coming. Do you think there's going to be more? Will it evolve and grow the way Skyrim did through the modding community? Uh,
Well, it
what do
would
you
be
think?
great. It'd be great if this could be a perfect opportunity for someone like Microsoft to maybe introduce the modding to something like Xbox more than they have traditionally, right? Because it's always been more
Yeah,
of a PC thing. And
yeah.
while I do game on PC a little bit, I'm much more of a console guy.
Hmm.
So it's always
PC
disappointing, no matter
Master
what the
Race.
game. Yeah. But well, it's always disappointing when you're on the console to hear about like all these mods, etc., that they get on the PC that you just don't get on the like
Yeah,
even with my kid who plays Minecraft, what you can do on the PC version of
PC.
Minecraft versus like the console versions. It's very disappointing that they don't, and I don't see any really technical reason why they couldn't do it, other than it's probably easier to restrict on the console. I mean, there's maybe some
Yeah.
technical reasons, but again, I'm sure it's feasible. So I would love
It's just not as
Starfield to be,
open a system, right? I think it all has
yeah,
to go through Microsoft validation, and I think that's part of the problem. They need to lighten up a little
but
bit
again,
when it
that's
comes
that's
to the
not a
walled
technical
garden.
restriction.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah,
a
yeah, but that's not a
philosophical
technical
one, I
restriction,
think, and
right?
a
It's
process one.
Yeah. So I think this would be the perfect game and the perfect platform for Microsoft. It's an exclusive to Microsoft, so they could really take advantage of it and maybe make this one of the first ones to really be a big modder, have a big modder community for the Xbox. But again, that might be a little bit more too much to hope. Um,
Yeah,
one thing I liked in uh, yeah, like one thing I liked on Fallout that they didn't have as much emphasis here was really souping up your armors. I would like them to maybe introduce that as well, like similar to shipbuilding, for you to be able to upgrade your
right.
own uh, guy or gal
Hmm.
in the same way as you can upgrade your ships and like have the same kind of interaction, like adding new things onto your when
Yeah, that'd
you're
be cool.
gone or whether it be your armor or whatever. I know it's spacesuits in this versus, but some of them are pretty much like armor. So that
Yep,
would be
they
kind
have
of
different
cool. But
different ratings.
yeah, I guess the worry I have is because, and maybe I'm adding to it, like with all my complaining, but with all the hate that Starfield has gotten, like, will Bethesda be a bit soured by this experience, or will they persevere? I hope they don't just like move on to the next thing. I hope they do go back to it because I do think that it was, in my mind, the best game of 2023, and I
Hmm.
think it has the potential to be even way better than it is if
Yeah,
they make some tweaks to it. So I really hope they stick with it and they ignore a lot of the haters out there. But we'll see, I guess, what happens.
yeah. I think there's a strong possibility that if this DLC is well received and people really like it, the reviews are good, et cetera, et cetera. There's definitely a possibility that we could see another one down the road. It's hard to know, right? I don't know what they had on their roadmap. I think it was only slated to be just the one expansion, but hey, things change, right?
Yeah.
That's the
I mean,
reality. It's
if
fluid.
if it sells, I'm sure they'd do more. But again, I hope they're not soured by this experience because
Mhm.
all of the things I found and all the things I moaned about through this discussion, it was all because I loved the game so much, and I just wished there was some things that was a little bit different. But I do think as well that comes with having a game which is so open with possibilities that you can almost imagine anything on it. So I really hope they go back to it. I hope the DLC does great. I hope they're encouraged to make more DLC for it, to expand it even more. In I don't like the fact, honestly, that we have to wait like pretty much a whole year to get the DLC. That seems a little bit. People will have moved on by then, but
Yeah,
it is what it is.
it might be some weird strategic thing, or maybe the DLC is just that big and they needed time to
Yeah,
refine it and make it everything it can be. And I'm hopeful that they'll fix some of the weird little idiosyncrasies and things that I know that the community would definitely receive very well. Uh, but we'll see. We'll see. It's not that far away now. Time flies, and I don't know when the actual release is off the top of my head. I think it's around September, though. I think it's a fall release for the DLC, if I'm not mistaken.
that would be
So
a whole year. But yeah, like, but yeah,
yeah,
it's like half a year now at this point, I suppose.
yeah, time goes quick. The summer will be over, and I'll be complaining about the cold again. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, any final thoughts? I think, or can we
No,
wrap it up?
it was a great game. It's that it comes
Yeah,
down to like one of the best games of this generation, I think, so far,
yeah,
of consoles at least. And I honestly, I love Bethesda. I love what they do in general. I think at the end of the day, the again, I think as we had predicted, it is a little bit of Fallout in space. You're
yep,
fast traveling to planets versus fast traveling to the next town, but
yeah.
that's not necessarily a bad thing. Fallout is a great game, and pretty much every iteration of Fallout, at least to my mind, from Fallout 3 on at least anyway, has been
Yeah.
better than well, I guess we have to ignore Fallout 76. Uh, but like,
Apparently that's pretty good now. Apparently
well,
it's pretty good.
but yeah, like every iteration of it is getting better than the last, and I just think this is the next. In a way,
Yeah.
the theme is a little bit different, but it's the next version of Fallout and the next expansion of Fallout in my mind. And yeah, I love this.
Cool. Yeah, no, I'll echo the same thing. It was my game of the year last year. I've said it a few times now. Looking forward to the DLC. And Fallout in space, is it really that bad? I don't think so. The fast traveling, you know, big deal. A lot of
Yeah,
that flying around would be pretty boring, I think. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more variety on the planets, other than just a few landing spots with one kind of being a town, if that, or a
yeah,
factory, and then a few other more remote locations. But there's definitely some potential there, I think, to improve, especially on the main planet. That's, kind of the hub of everything. It'd be nice to see that fill out a little bit, but
yeah.
generally speaking, great game. Don't want to discourage anyone from playing it that hasn't played it. The rumors are still out there that after this DLC drops, that it will see a PlayStation release. Maybe it will. That might be enough to, what would be funny is if the scores for it are higher on PlayStation, but
Well,
we'll see what happens there. If it does drop on PlayStation, who knows? Maybe that'll be enough of an extra player base for them to drop another DLC at some point down the road. We'll see.
somehow,
Wouldn't
like
be
I don't know why, but I was saying earlier that I'm not an Xbox or PlayStation guy. Um, for whatever reason, I've always kind of thought of Bethesda as being a more Xboxy type of game anyway. Um,
it's
so so if an Xbox, like in the same way, if God of War came out on Xbox, I'd still probably play it on PlayStation. I don't know why. I tend to play Assassin's Creed when I play it on PlayStation. So
yeah.
I think even if it did come out in PlayStation, I'm quite happy with it on Xbox.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, there's a long history between Microsoft and Bethesda, and that's probably why you have that impression, I think. They were partners in long, long before they were acquired. And, they've always had that strong relationship. So, yeah, well, I don't know how long we've been talking. It's probably an hour and a half at this point or more. So, it probably wouldn't hurt to wrap it up here, but thanks for hopping on with me again. It's been 5 or 6 months, I think, since we had the initial conversation. It's definitely great getting your thoughts and insights into the game with the amount of time you spent in it. And if anyone's watching this or has sat through it all, we definitely appreciate you taking the time out to listen to us ramble. And yeah, if you haven't subscribed, maybe do that too. Finn and I are talking about other things that we want to do and try and get a more regular cadence of videos dropping on the channel. So thanks again, Finn. I appreciate you hopping on with me, and
Thanks
we'll
for
talk
having me.
again soon. Yeah. Cheers,
All right, take
everybody.
care. Bye bye.